Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, my students. Peace be upon you. Now we are going to continue in our student book, level 6, with our third secondary students. Okay, level 6, student book, unit 5, references and revision, page number 58. We will continue in studying modal verbs of obligation, prohibition, and advice in the past. The usage. Okay. We use had to to talk about things which were obligatory or necessary. Had to. We use had to with things which were obligatory or necessary. We use didn't have to talk about things which were not obligatory or necessary. Okay, had to and didn't have to. Needed to. We use needed to talk about things which were obligatory or necessary. Needed to with obligatory or necessary. We use to didn't need to talk about things which were not obligatory or necessary, and so we didn't do them. This is didn't need to. Okay, we use needn't have plus past participle or verb 3. Needn't have plus past participle to talk about things that were not obligatory or necessary, but we did them. Okay, but we did them. We use needn't have to plus verb 3 when we when we talk about things that were not obligatory or necessary, but we did them. We use wasn't or weren't allowed to talk about past prohibitions. To talk about past prohibitions, we use wasn't or weren't allowed to. We use couldn't to talk about things that were prohibited or not possible. Prohibited or not possible. We use couldn't. We use or ought to have, should have, or ought to have, shouldn't have, plus past participle to criticize past actions or to say that they were a mistake. Okay, this was should have or ought to have, shouldn't have, plus past participle. Okay, so the modal verbs of obligation, prohibition, and advice in the past are had to, didn't have to, needed to, didn't need to, needn't have plus past participle, wasn't or weren't allowed to, couldn't, should have or ought to have, shouldn't have plus past participle. Now we are going to answer our second exercise number 2 on page 59, modal verbs of obligation, prohibition, and advice, past and present. Yes. Now let's answer this exercise. Write sentences with the correct form of the modal verbs and verbs given. Okay, we will use the verb in its correct tense. Okay, number 1. Yesterday, I space talk to the bank manager. I want to use have to. Yes, the answer is yes. Yesterday, I had to talk to the bank manager. Number 2, I space worry about the exam because it was easy. I want to use need. Hmm? Try to think. Yes, I needn't have worried. I needn't have worried. Okay, exercise number 3. Usually students write their exam answers in red because teachers use red pens to correct. Yes, when we use red pens to correct, usually students, I want to use must. Yes, mustn't write. Mustn't write. Number 4, I space read the instructions, but I didn't and I got the whole exercise wrong. I want to use ought to. The answer is yes. I ought to have read. I ought to have read. Okay, read here is the past participle of read. Yes, number 5. I'm sorry. I space lied to you. It was wrong. We want to use should. The answer is I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lied. Shouldn't have lied. Number 6. She space get up early this morning so she stayed in bed. We want to use need. So the answer is yes. She didn't need to get. Didn't need to get. Number 7. We space write the essay this week. We can do it next week. We want to use have to. The answer is yes. Excellent. We don't have to write. We don't have to write. Okay. Thank you, my students, and goodbye.